It's hardly surprising that the commentators and pontificators are slicing and dicing Donald Trump over his plan to ban Muslims temporarily from traveling to the United States. But some journalists who aren't in the opinion business are joining in the criticism as well.
Trump's statement, even in this season of extremes, is a dangerous proposal that overrides history, the law, and the foundation of America itself. Defeating ISIS will be long, hard, and expensive. Perhaps even more so now, because ISIS is likely to use Donald Trump's statements as a recruiting tool.
A lot more need to be led by somebody, not to be dragged down the wormhole by some carnival huckster. He's not representing any of that. He's representing the worst, darkest part of all that is America.
So the country is in a panic. There's demagoguery. This is really not the country that I know. It is absolutely an image, an impression, a black spot on our collective foreign policy and our conscience. And it also it feeds into the ISIS narrative.
Does it bother you when straight journalists like Tom Brokaw, who's not an anchor anymore, Richard Engel, Shep Smith, speak out against a presidential candidate in such vociferous terms?
It's an important moment in journalism that it's led to this, where there's been this blending over the last few years of news blending into opinion and the quasi-news sites and the real news sites. But this all-out abandonment of neutrality when it comes to certain discussions, I think, is pretty remarkable. And I do think, although some people are attracted to that, there's still a market out there. People still wish they could turn to a channel or a show and see things handled and treated from a more neutral and objective standpoint.
Where's the line anymore between news and opinion?
Well, I think the line has been completely blurred. I think you look at it and you want to ask this question of why just not report the news? Just state the facts. And that's not the case anymore. I think we're seeing a point where these journalists are coming out. I mean, Tom Brokaw's piece was clearly an opinion piece where he was making his arguments based on historical content to harshly criticize Donald Trump.
Brokaw likened Trump to demagogues of the past. We've seen some of this in print as well, including Joe McCarthy.
Right.
Is this what you learned when you took journalism school classes?
In journalism school classes, this is like a deeper philosophical conversation of where journalism is heading. And I think, we talked about sensationalism in journalism, and you always wanted to avoid that area if you were going to be a straight up journalist, and that's not what we're seeing. And it could be even the 24-hour news cycles that feed into this as well.
Right, and journalists are on Twitter where you tend to be more opinionated, but it's almost like some of these journalists, who I respect, are saying this is so important, this guy Trump is so dangerous that I have to abandon my usual journalistic detachment and come out against this.
Look, I worked for ABC News, and I started my career as in mainstream journalism, and I think that objectivity is always an aspiration. It's always much harder to achieve, I think, because people have views and they have opinions. People aren't robots, right? They actually, and one of the reasons I went into politics is that I had a hard time maintaining my objectivity, frankly, in journalism, and I made a decision to cross over to go fight for the stuff.
You wanted to be an advocate.
I wanted to be an advocate, and I was honest about it.
Those who stayed in the news business, except for the commentators, are not supposed to be.
The only thing I'll say, though, about this issue about comparing him to McCarthy and so on, Trump is comparing himself to historical figures. He's saying that he's like FDR in what he's proposing, and so where I disagree.
Wait, he's not saying
no. But what I'm saying is that racism and exclusion against minorities is a core part of the American story, right? This is not some abnormal moment in our history. This is something we've been wrestling with and fighting over since the beginning of the Republic. And I think part of it is, as an advocate, is that I welcome Trump's comments because I wanted to defeat them in the area of public opinion.
Well, I don't think he's comparing himself to FDR. He's saying on a specific proposal, right. FDR.
But he's raising historical comparisons, so I think it's fair.
You mentioned BuzzFeed earlier. BuzzFeed is a site that does many things, but it also has news reporters covering the campaign. And Ben Smith, the editor-in-chief, I just want to take a moment to read this. He used to work for Politico. Put out a memo to the staff in which he said it is entirely fair to call Donald Trump a mendacious racist. Now, I said we're going to read the whole thing. All right. As the politics team and others here have reported clearly and aggressively, he's out there saying things that are false and running an overtly anti-Muslim campaign. BuzzFeed News' reporting is rooted in facts, not opinion. These are facts. Oh, it's not opinion. He's just a racist.
Right. He's letting, again, he's directing his staff to say it's okay to call him a racist instead of reporting the news as it is and saying, well, this is Trump's proposal. What does this mean for the the Constitution and just laying out the facts. And again, I just think that what's happening is that consumers today have so many options when it comes to the media. And so they can pick and choose what they want. And it's usually those outlets that are probably more on the opinion side where people are drawn to it. They are drawn to those news outlets that are going to reflect what their opinions are. So again, I think that it creates that opportunity for BuzzFeed to, incite individuals to go their way.
Just very briefly, is there a bit of a bubble problem here? Like most of the people who these journalists talk to, hang out with, go to parties with, also don't like Trump?
Yes, of course. So the people that are cheering them on for the opinions that they give and the actions that they take, and they tell one another that it's a great idea. Early on in all of this, just briefly, I was in a room after Trump made his first criticism of John McCain, and there were 8 people, this was in Florida, some conservatives and some liberals, who all said they were going to vote for him. And I thought, because I don't hang around a select crowd, I have a lot of different people, there's something happening here.
All right, Cheryl Atkinson, Simon Rosenberg, thanks very much. Mercy, we'll see you a little later.